Good morning. My name is Cory Anthony. I'm the Study Abroad Manager here at Shoreline. Before the introductions, I'd just like to remind everyone that we offer study abroad programs, both short-term and long-term, throughout the year. One of our students will be spending spring quarter in Berlin, and we also have short-term programs to Jamaica, Paris, Cambodia, and Costa Rica this summer. If you'd like to learn more about the programs, feel free to talk with me after the event, or you can find my card on the table by the door and you can send me an email anytime. Today's event is a sort of sequel to one from fall quarter. Our students who went to South Africa talked about where they went and what they saw. Now they'd like to talk about how the program affected them personally and about some of the people that they met. Well, in South Africa, our students participated in historical lectures and social lectures and interacted with South Africans of different ethnicities, religions, and classes. That's what they'll be talking about today. Dr. Ernest Johnson, who will shortly be joining us, is a professor of multicultural studies in the Equity and Social Justice Department at Shoreline. He has lectured on African American history, multiculturalism, linguistics, religious studies, and ethnic studies at Shoreline and at other colleges and universities. He is also the advisor of the Muslim Student Association. Joining him today are Danica Tran and Rebecca Thorne. Danica, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Yes, hi. I'm a first-year student at Shoreline, and I'm going for my health psychology major and also holistic landscape design. I'm just interested in working with people and the environment, and that's what drew me to South Africa because it's a very beautiful country. There's a lot that I didn't know about it, and also just learning about the people there.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Thorne. When summer comes around, I'll have been at Shoreline for 5 years. I was part of the CEO program, which helps high schoolers who haven't finished high school get a degree. And I was, as Danica was saying, really attracted to South Africa because of the content, because of the people, because of what we had learned. My focus right now is primarily I'm going to transfer and hopefully major in American Indian Studies with a multicultural focus. And so coming to South Africa was really profound.
Thank you. To start things off, the students and eventually Dr. J will talk about their experiences and how they were affected by them. Then they will take questions. Please use the microphone when you ask questions so that everyone can hear you. And you can also write your questions down on a card and pass them to people on either side of the room. And now please join me in giving a hand to our students who traveled to South Africa.
Okay, so I also forgot to mention 2 of my favorite hobbies / passions is 1, I'm a lyricist, and 2, I like to play basketball. So right now, towards the end of my trip, I wrote a rap dedicated to South Africa and what I had learned. So I'm going to perform that right now. Hello? Okay. I originally have a beat to this song, but I decided to not use my beat and go a cappella so that everyone can understand what I'm saying better. All right. South Africa, I'm a traveler in pursuit of the truth, escaping lies that's been taught since youth. Had to see for myself, had to get a closer look, getting tired of reading from manipulated textbooks. Used to put my hand to heart, joining to pledge my nation. Too young to see how pride causes separation. Too oblivious for peaceful negotiations. Too busy pushing us inside integration. Left our souls in the midst of assimilation. Discrimination, the biggest crime that we're faced with. Wouldn't mind segregation if it meant black unification, but all I see is colonial invasion, the deterioration of a child's comprehension, blinding their perception, dreams limited with thin, faded glimpse outside the box we live in. Step out the box. Now my goal is to hold hands with yours together fighting evil corporations, force pledge to the flag of failing resources, shipping more we can't afford, running out of choices. The U.S. preaches opportunity, meaning middle class still broke and voiceless. Systematic problems rooted everywhere it seems, but together we can water the seed of Madiba's tree until we end the long walk to his dream renamed Chiluwe in honor of Steve. Here we stand, modern abolitionists, in remembrance of the father of Black consciousness. We are the uncommon shamans, healers of the nation with Jamin, because the best medicine is found in connection. To laugh, dance, pray, eat in collaboration. That's our master plan to protect the roots of our generation. Hope our future understands coexistence. It's written in our heartbeats. If only we could listen. Commit to your community. We won't give in to the comfort of society. Remembering to keep the dreams alive. Kids looking up to you, let the culture survive. Do it for all the brave soldiers who sacrificed. We won't stop until justice rings for the victimized. Thank you.
Awesome. Great.
Okay. So, right here, this is a picture, and in the background you can see the most famous Table Mountain. Yes. All right. So first, I'm starting off with one of the museums we visited, which is the District 6 Museum. One of the things you're going to learn about the people is how they were relocated into different communities in South Africa. This is a picture of, on the left, the bottom left, there's a picture of the construction that was happening. The people of color and the Blacks were removed from where they lived and separated into different communities. And the result of this led to lots of health problems, injuries, and even some people have died from what was happening because they were relocated into homes that were very poorly built. And then you can see a lot of injustice that happened because of that. And this man in the right bottom picture with the white hat, his name is Noor, and he's one of the people who was directly affected by it. And he works at the museums to spread his story about him and all the other families that were separated because of this. Another museum we visited was the Steve Biko Museum. And it was one of my favorite visits because before going to South Africa, I did not know who Steve Biko was. And now I learned that he's one of the most memorable people that impacted me, and I just was able to learn a lot from going to his hometown, and we went to his gravesite. We also visited his home, as you can see in this bottom right picture. And at the museum, they performed very well put plays that just literally made us tear up in the audience. And we also watched some interviews as well. Do you have anything to say about the Steve Biko Museum?
Yeah, the plays themselves depicted his life, and it brought us to tears because it especially focused on his death. So Steve Biko was brutally murdered by the white South African police force. And one of the bigger things for me during this was when we visited his grave in Chiluwe. I believe I'm saying that correctly. All of us gathered around this gravestone that was just like many of the others that you could see. And one of the biggest things that our tour guides told us was that Steve Biko, for all he did, the people of South Africa would have given him a huge monument, but they didn't, because he expressly requested that his grave would be treated just as everyone else's. And so that it tells you the kind of man that he was, and how much his people loved him.
Yeah, his death was really saddening for his community, and the woman also told me that Chiluwe actually means lost hope, because after he died, they would call his hometown that because he was gone. And now we're going to talk about some of our school visitations.
So on the bottom right, that is the Belleville High School. That is normally the white high school that students attend in South Africa. And we visited this high school along with several of the township high schools, which are the traditional black high schools in South Africa that were located in these townships. And the differences between both places of education were really stark, and it just, you walk into Belleville and it looked like a university. They had cups with their own engravements of their logo on it. They served us tea. They had like 3 theater rooms, 2 computer labs, a huge library, and you go to one of the township high schools that we visited, Walmer, and they had just gotten up a library for themselves, and what they use as a storeroom.
Yeah, so their storage room actually, the librarian, the newer librarian, she just started putting books in there and transforming this closet into a library, which is the library that you can see in the background. And I'd just like to mention, like, the first appearances of both the schools was very dramatic. When you first went to Walmer High School, it just looks like a regular school, but even in some of the buildings, you'll see cracks and holes in the ceilings. They did not have basketball courts or lots of sports arenas or anything like that. But when you when we first got to Belleville High School, you'll see a whole bunch of basketball courts, a lot of sports arenas, and they had big gates. And the first appearance was just really dramatic for us because it felt really unfair that all these students are working just as hard to deserve something, but it's just very unbalanced.
The help from the government is not the same for both as it should be.
Yes.
The funding is not the same.
And then something I also wanted to mention was, because their library was just being built, everything that's donated to them is all English books. And me and my friend looked at their traditional books, their Costa books, and they don't really have much that's in their own language. And the elders that we spoke to would know about 12 different African language, and now the kids are just barely learning one. So that's also some assimilation that's being brought over here and there. Okay. So these are more pictures of our Walmer High School experience. It was really fun. They're all very welcoming to us.
So this is a compilation of places that we visited that really had huge importance for Nelson Mandela, or as he is, very warmly known as Madiba. First is Robben Island. Freedom cannot be manacled. That was the first wall you see that when you come in, by boat. And a lot of us couldn't help but take a picture of it because it's stunning. It really catches you. And we went into this, prison that's been a political prison for the longest time. Madiba was in prison here for 18 years, and before him, different Xhosa clan leaders and African tribal leaders that resisted colonization from the Europeans were placed here. And a political prisoner actually led our tour, and just his experiences, what he told us, what really happened here, the punishments, how Madiba was forced, and a couple of his friends, and many were forced to be in rock quarries and split rocks down to sizes, and that brutal work in the sun. It was just really, it really made you kind of take a step back and look at what happened in apartheid era. And then the picture that is moving, you see that's a rock slide in Unu, which is the hometown of Nelson Mandela in the Transkei. And this is the very same rock slide that we loved and enjoyed, every one of us, that Nelson Mandela as a kid with his friends would slide down. So it's overwhelming to be able to kind of brag about that. Like, oh yeah, we kind of went to that place where Madiba enjoyed himself.
Yeah, it was definitely a really big energy switch, being able to do something as fun and enjoying as that. And we were all just laughing and just having a lot of fun there. And then on the flip side, we went to the prison, and something that really will change your perspective is reading Nelson Mandela's book, A Long Walk to Freedom. And when you step in the prison and you know his story, it's just really a heavy energy that you can experience, and he's very inspirational. And I think when I came back, I really changed from being able to read his story and experience what he went through by going to the prison, and just knowing that no matter where you're placed, if you can hold your morality and just be like Nelson Mandela, then it could be okay, because he was in that prison for a long time, but he changed the system in many great ways, and you'd have to read the book to find out about that.
And here, we came across a lot of youth in South Africa that they were just, it was incredible. This picture, the Ada orphanage, we visited here. We had a clothing drive before we went to South Africa to raise, to gather clothes for these children whose parents had died because of HIV and AIDS. And being in this orphanage was incredibly inspirational. These kids were just, they were running around, they were screaming, they were so excited to see us. Muffy, the director who actually funded it and created it from the ground up, she even came to us when we were about to sit down to lunch. She found us in a little restaurant off the way, and she was like, "Can you please come right now? The kids just really want to see you."
Yeah.
And we were like, well, we can't say no, even if we're hungry, it doesn't matter, and we came and we carried so many suitcases with us just full of clothes, and we were unpacking those from the van, and they were just so excited to see us, and they were so welcoming. And that picture in the left corner, they were doing performances, and these performances, oh my God, they were incredible, such fierceness and pride, and it was great. And you can see the kids, they were just, I think 2 kids came up to me and they're like, "Pick me up." So I had to pick them both up, and my back hasn't hurt so much since, but it was a lot of fun. They were great.
Yeah, the kids sang to us and they sounded like angels, even though we brought our suitcases of clothes and whatever we could bring them. I think that they gave us more than we could ever give them. They just welcomed us with such open arms. They wanted to perform for us, and they just wanted to give us something, and I think they definitely did. And I'll never forget that experience, just seeing all of them. All right. This is Longa. So another really transforming experience when we went to South Africa was visiting these townships. And Longa is one of the largest and oldest of Cape Town. You could see it from the road. I think we did see it, if I'm right, Dr. J, when we came in. We first got off the plane, we looked to our left, and you see all these shacks and shanties, and you just, they're right next to the road, and then across the road, you have like the supermarket stores and stuff. So the differences that are so close to each other, it's mind-blowing. And again, Black South Africans were historically segregated to these spaces. A lot of the bigger buildings you see and the shacks and stuff, they were actually built for mining workers, because they had a couple of, sorry, what? Dormitories. They were dormitories for the miners that I think came to mind, the diamonds, right? And diamonds and
work in any of the industries around Cape Town.
Right. So, they were built long ago, but they're still there. Like these shanty towns, it doesn't matter that apartheid's ended. It's still taking a very long time for the government to really, catch up to speed, like to get these people into actual housing that everyone on this planet deserves. And one of the cooler places we went to, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this one, but I think it's Zoli's barbecue place. Oh my God, barbecue in South Africa is incredible. I've never had better barbecue. And we went there, and they were really nice. And the music, there was that DJ you see, he had great music going on. So it's a really profound experience to go through.
Yeah, regardless of how their neighborhood looks, the people there are so nice, and we'll just drive through the street and we'll look out our buses, and you just see everyone talking to each other. You just see community going on. We got invited to, hang out with different families. And it's just crazy because even though we live in super nice houses here, I don't even see a lot of people like just talking on the street or saying hello or just that same type of social interaction. So that's just something that I wanted to mention about the people there. Okay, this is the Humans Origin exhibit that we got to visit. And so we walked down this long trail and the stairs to visit these caves that were believed to be where the first humans kind of were living at. And it was really cool because many students from all over the world come to visit this part of South Africa so that they could do research. And I would have never known this if we didn't go here. So these caves are believed to be the temporary shelter of the people who lived here that were escaping from large game. In the bottom right picture, where there is just that vast ocean, that used to be a dry Sahara. And that's where like elephants, lions, all those big game animals used to just roam. And now it's just an ocean. And one of the reasons for that is because of ice melting and water just pushes out. So that was really interesting to learn. And if you see in the middle picture how there's a bucket lying there, in a lot of the caves, there's many buckets you'll just see around. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of remodeling being done and just people building casinos and also this big golf course. And all the runoff and the chemicals are just dripping into the caves, and it's actually changing them. And it's pretty bad because it's changing the interior and polluting the caves. And if this is where the first humans are, then we're going to lose and erase really important information that we need to know. So because of human activity, there's just a lot of problems happening in this area. But our tour guide was really kind, and he taught us a lot about what he believed the first humans, how they survived and how they lived here. So that was a really cool experience. Coffee Bay.
Coffee Bay was the tail end of our 10-day road trip that we took up the Eastern Cape. And it was great. It was great to, stick around for, I think, 2 days. And we that countryside you see, we actually hiked along the coastline. And, funny story, Doc over here has a great sense of humor. So I was starting to get over a cold, and I didn't know if I wanted to do this hike. And so the next morning, he's like, "Oh, Becca, it's just a walk. You should really do it." That wasn't a walk.
It's like 2 or 3 hours.
And my legs were shaking by the time we were done. And in the very end, we had to go down this steep incline that I kid you not, had to be like, oh my God, 80 or something degrees. And I mean, our tour guides were going down like it was nothing. And I was like, if I fall over, I'm going to roll all the way down there, and I'm going to die. So, but it was great to be here. It was great to rest here. You saw a lot of cows. The views were extraordinary.
Yeah, these pictures in Coffee Bay are actually just from our hike, but this is not the place that we actually stayed in. What was the name of the
coffee shack?
Yeah, we stayed at the coffee shack, and that place was beautiful. I think it was just so beautiful and lively there that none of us had our phones out or cameras to take pictures of it. So we have no evidence of this going on. But it was just like such a cute, warming place. And there was just hammocks and there was lights, like Christmas lights all over the trees, and like bars and a pool table, and just a lot of people from different places all there socializing.
A lot of, what do you call those, backpacker, hitchhikers?
Yeah, backpackers.
Yeah.
A lot of backpackers were there, and everyone was just talking and hanging out and dancing and singing. There was music, so that's why we have no pictures. I'm pretty sure everyone was just too involved. But we did take pictures during our hike to Hole in the Wall, which is the top right picture. Yeah, and Yeah, it was really beautiful. I stood by the tour guide and he would just tell me about their community and the villagers, and there's 18 different separate villages in Coffee Bay, and there's one head guy, and every time something big would happen, all of the villages would come together at the top of the hill. And he said they had come together for 2 times the past year to the top of the hill to pray for rain because it hasn't been raining there. And it's pretty bad because once the grass dries out, then it's really bad for the goats and the sheep and the cows and the horses that live there. And that's how the people in that community make money. So because of, I don't know if it's due to climate change or what's happening, but it's changing their economy and their environment in this place. And now they're thinking about transforming it and making it more city-like, which is really sad to know because it's just so beautiful the way it is with all its bountiful nature. So yeah, and it was crazy because our last night there, we were all dancing and celebrating for our last night, and it started to rain. It started to pour. And me and our friends were just like, it's raining. And I looked at the tour guide, and I was like, it's raining. And he didn't know why. Like, I was so excited. And then he was like, oh my gosh, it's raining. And we were just talking about how they've been praying for rain. So I think that was just so magical how that happened. Yeah.
This was our journey down to the Cape of Good Hope, the southernmost tip of Africa. And I mean, it was incredible to be there. That one little picture with the baboons, I think, are those?
Yeah, the little monkeys.
Yeah, they were everywhere on the trails, and they like to steal things. So you would go up to like one of the outer structures of some of the hills. Sometimes they have like structures like little forts or whatever, lookouts. There we go. And they'd be especially if there's tourists there. They were like everywhere. I had on these bright neon orange sunglasses, and I felt something tug at my hair, and it had been trying to grab my sunglasses, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And so I hid my sunglasses, and I was like, I'm gonna go hike. And so then you see me like sitting over, you know, and looking over all these views. South Africa is extraordinarily beautiful, and we've used beautiful a lot, so it's going to be overused, but we really mean it when we say it. Like,
Yeah.
That was another huge experience of just being there. It's incredible.
Yeah, one of the biggest surprises to me was the way we learn about Africa in America is so different than what Africa is really like. One funny thing we heard is when you hear about Africa, we think about it as one big village. It's dry and it's hot and there's animals and the Sahara and the red sun. It's all very stereotypical ideas of South Africa. And I did not think I was going to see an ocean. And I go to South Africa and I see the most beautiful beaches and oceans I've seen in my life. And so that's something to learn.
That was a good reality check.
Yeah, definitely. And I forgot to mention one thing about Coffee Bay. During the hike, we came to this big incline that looked like a cliff, and the tour guide told me it used to be a waterfall. And it's totally dried out now, and that's what the animals used to drink out of, and now it's just totally gone. So now they have to share water with the animals as well. And one cool thing about the coffee shack we stayed out, they're very eco-friendly. But I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
Oh man, good
Okay,
eats.
yeah. I wanted to mention some of the places we ate, because right from the place we stayed, you'd walk down the street and there's so many different restaurants and cuisines you could try. In the top right corner, you could see the Chandelier. That was at one of our best breakfast places called the Honey Bun. And I took a picture of the chandelier. You can't see it very clearly, but those white dots are actually teacups, and the things hanging off of them are spoons. And I just thought it was the coolest thing because in the cafes in South Africa, you'll see a lot of recycled art. And it's just really awesome how they managed to do it. Like, you'd go to another restaurant, like the one in the bottom right picture, and they would use like big wine glasses that are just cleaned out and stuff and pour water out of them. And people are like, what are you drinking? And it's just water. But like, they just are definitely recycling more and reusing things. In the two middle pictures, that was at a Tibetan restaurant we went to, and it was all vegetarian, and they also had a meditation room. And that was just a really nice experience because I'm a vegetarian. So if you're a vegetarian and you want to go to South Africa, you will have choices. Yeah, and it was a really beautiful restaurant. The bottom most left picture is at an Ethiopian restaurant that our friend Dejan, he's Ethiopian, and he was craving his food, so we got that. In the bottom middle picture, we're at Sticky Fingers, which is the burger and fry joint that everyone wanted to go to. In the top right picture, of course, we enjoyed our own home-cooked meals as well. You'll have chances to cook for yourself if you want, and if you're not trying to eat out every day. And I thought that was really nice to just have our own dining experience with all of us, like a big family. And some of the must-try places that I mentioned was a place called That Place, Coffee and Books. The whole wall is made out of shelvings with books that you could either read or you can buy the books. And I think that it was just such a cool spot to just hang out. The cafes are really cool. And as I mentioned, Honey Bun, and also they have this big Indian food bazaar in downtown.
This was our lodging in a district of Cape Town called Observatory. You might be curious. On the left-hand picture, me and Dr. J are drinking up chi because the sun was out and it was beautiful. It was great. And these are just various images of the lodge itself. And this thing, it continuously reminded me of like a Mary Poppins bag. Like you get inside and it just gets bigger. And there were like, I think 2 or 3 like sitting rooms you see down in the right-hand corner. There are a couple doors like you see there with the exit, the fire exit. And, you know, we would interchange. We'd have breakfast there sometimes when we'd go out to eat. And that was kind of interesting to juggle, trying to get all of us up at the same time to get breakfast. You know, because there was different nightlife going on in South Africa, and there are people who wanted sleep. So it was a lot of fun staying here. The people were great.
They cooked breakfast for us every morning. The women there were all really nice. I spent a couple of days actually helping them clean up the hotel. Like I'll just start sweeping and stuff because it's just like such a close-knit community, and you could see what needs to be done, like just some chairs that need to be pushed in. And I was like, why not? You know, they are there since like 5 a.m. or maybe even earlier, and you just see the same woman working so hard, and sometimes you just want to like help them, you know.
I would be walking around with one of our papers that we had in our classes before we went to South Africa of like, you know, common Xhosa phrases and how to speak that language. And I would say, okay, you need to repeat. I would like, you know, track this one down. They were super nice. I was like, can you tell me how to say this or this? And they'd be laughing so hard because I'd butcher it. But I would try and keep trying and then eventually be like, yeah, no, it's perfect. And, you know, just trying to learn the language was a lot of fun, and it was really rewarding, you know, and you could see it, like people were really excited if we'd ever say molo, which is hello, or moloweni, which is hello everybody, and they'd be like, oh my God, these students are speaking Xhosa, like that's so cool, and we're just like, yay.
The entire hotel was commenting to me about these students because they took the time to learn some of the language before we went. And they used it, and they created this real connection that they hadn't experienced before. And this place has been open for, I don't know, half a century or something. But these students in particular made an impression, particularly on the staff inside of the Riverview. It's also really well located. It's right next to the train station, so you can just like walk out your door and hop on a train and go into Cape Town and so forth. And it's like 2 blocks from the restaurants and everything, and so it just tends to be a really very local place. A lot of people from South Africa, black South Africans and others stay at this place. It's not designed particularly for guests and tourists, and that makes it nice too because you're interacting with people all the time.
Yeah, it seems very surreal looking back at all the pictures, especially the Riverview Lodge, just because it really felt like home. Mm-hmm. At first, we weren't all comfortable with just walking out into the street at any time of the day, you know, like exploring. We would all just group up, but towards the end of the trip, we were all just hanging out, going to like local restaurants and the jazz. There's a really cool jazz spot that I went to, and they're all just small businesses, but the people there are just so nice. And on one of the last days, I went to that jazz spot, and they told me a whole bunch of South African music and a whole bunch of reggae, and I wrote that down, and I took that with me. And every time we would just hang out, we were all ready to go home. Like, we would be like, let's go home, and this was it. And it just hits this place in my heart when I look back at it, and that I hope that I can walk through that same place again and experience that. All right, so thank you, and this is question time. Do you have any?
I like that. You're right, Blake. If you want to jump in and say a few words, you don't have to, but if you want to.
No, just questions would be great for the students, and I'll.
It's on.
What was the hardest part of the trip?
The hardest part of the trip.
You want to go first?
Maybe the hardest part of the trip is just getting everybody together to leave at a certain time. There's one student, his name was Prince. Sorry to put him on blast, but man, like, he's such a pretty boy. Like, yes, I admit he'll be looking spiffy most of the time, but we're all waiting in the bus, ready to leave to the next location, and we're like, where is Prince?
That's why he's called Prince.
Yeah, so it was really funny just having 15 students all trying to get them all together and rounding them up just like little children. But yeah, I guess that was the hardest part, but I really enjoyed mostly everything, so can't complain.
Dr. J would say it's like it's like herding cats. It doesn't work. And just quick answer to that question too. For me, because I am partially white, I think in a perspective of, power and privilege, especially coming from America, where American passports they get you to quite a lot of places that other passports cannot. When I would walk down the streets of Observatory, I was probably the only white person they saw. And I think having this awareness of not immediately looking at those around me, black South Africans of color, and not being that immediate taught assumption of oh, they're dangerous, or they're gonna come and rob me or something like that. I had to fight that every day and everywhere I went, because that's been taught to me here in my country, here in our society, and going to places such as the Slave Museum, Slave Lodge, the original lodge that the Dutch Indian East Trade Company built when they, came in and they housed slaves in here, and going through into these museums and seeing the suffering of black South Africans and other South Africans of color, and just seeing how disrespected they were and how this still influences them today, and the degree and the history and how resilient they were, that being constantly bombarded with this information and always having to collect myself and check myself from doing something that I wouldn't want to do myself. That was difficult, but it was a good difficult. Like if I wasn't uncomfortable in something, then I wasn't doing something right.
That's definitely hard on a deeper level, and if we got into that, we would be here for hours. We talked about that, yeah.
Did you have a question?
Yes, is this not on?
Yes, on.
Oh, it's on, okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing your very incredible experience. My question is on the schools, the differences between the two schools that you went to, the Bellevue and the local school.
Sure.
How do they determine who goes to what school? Is it strictly according to racial, or is it based on where they reside? And is the Bellevue school a private school or is it a government school?
Okay. So Bellevue School is a public school. When we saw it, we thought it was a private university, honestly. I thought we were at the wrong place. That was the first time I had gone to Bellevue. They have fee-free schools and fee high schools. And so some high schools, your parents have to pay a fee for you to go to the high school. The high schools in the township are fee-free, right? But there's also been this historic kind of divide in terms of the material structures of the high schools, right? So the high schools that you have to pay a fee for are in the better neighborhoods, and there's many more resources there, and they've historically been there. The fee-free schools that are in the townships are very poorly constructed, very poorly kept up. And so the government now is allocating the same amount of money to each high school. But the high schools in the suburbs and so forth are so far ahead of the other schools that they'll never catch up if the government gives them the same amount of money. That's the issue. But people have a choice to go. But folks in the township almost exclusively cannot afford to send their kids to a high school where you have to pay a fee. They can only afford the fee-free, and the fee-free is not the same caliber as the other ones. And we saw that when they were studying. I mean, the students at the suburban high school had study halls. They had all kinds of
Home ec. They had home ec. They had theater. Big gyms, and that
Art
was just
rooms.
not available.
Yeah.
And not only that, but their mind state, like what they're taught, I feel like at school. When one of our students were wearing the Steve Biko shirt, like the one that Becca is wearing right now, one of the students was like, "Who's on your shirt?" And you live in South Africa and you don't know like one of the most historically important figures from the country. And we explained it a little bit, and the teacher a little like hushed down the question. She was like, "We don't have to talk about this right now, like," because we were like, "Have you ever learned about who he is?" And the student was like, "No." And then that's when the teacher kind of like tried to change the subject.
Shut it down.
Yeah,
She shut it down.
definitely.
Yeah.
And so me and my friend started talking to one of the Belleville high school students about it. And his mind state was he thought it was wrong that people are trying to give Black people more opportunity, because he said that it's taking opportunities away from them that they deserve, that they worked hard for, and now this is how it's being divided. But I tried to show him that if you want equality, you need to give the people who need it more to them, because you're already at a good place. And I tried to explain this to him, but that's definitely gonna take more than one sitting talk to explain to someone. And then also when we went to Walmer High School and I talked to the history teacher, not every history class will talk about apartheid or what has happened. And that really surprised me, because that's just one of the most important things that's happened in your country. But she said that some of the more high schools that have the Africans, they don't teach that, or they don't have a history teacher available. And that really surprised me, and that's really saddening to know, because I think it's important that all those students learn about what happened in their country so that they could try to change something. Yeah, when we talked to one of the college students, she said that even if they decided to go to college there, they wouldn't find a job. So they would go to college and they'll try to fly out to America to find a good job.
Can I ask? Can A follow-up question, because your first slide was at the house of Steve Biko, and you just mentioned this, so this is great. So, and I realize there have been lots of biographies written, but for the value of us in the audience, who was Steve Biko? There were thousands of people that lost their lives, but what is it about Steve Biko that made him so memorable?
When Nelson Mandela and the leadership of the African National Congress were incarcerated for all those years, right, 27 years in terms of Mandela, the person who was most popular in terms of raising the awareness and the consciousness of people was Steve Biko. And in terms of a lot of the younger people there, Biko is more important to them than Mandela. They revere Mandela, but the person that they feel that they are most connected to is Biko. And he's considered to be the father of black consciousness. Yep. He was trying to raise the awareness of the African people, that they were able to govern themselves and that they needed to stand on their own feet and that they had a glorious history that they needed to re-embrace, and that what the brainwashing that was happening under apartheid was all false, and it wasn't who they truly were. And so he was able to instill this pride in the young people, which was really responsible for them rejecting instruction in Afrikaans, which is a form of Dutch that was being introduced into the schools. And they knew that it was to close them down, to cut them off to the English-speaking world and the greater world. And so the students' ability to understand what was happening by the imposition of the Afrikaans language came from the consciousness raising of Biko, largely.
Was Steve Biko a musician, a writer, taxi driver? Just
no, he was a student and an activist.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a student and an activist. So,
last word right here.
Yeah, okay.
Last question.
Oh, he had a question too. We can answer his too after.
How well are they integrating since the end of the integration, since the end of the apartheid? Do you see a lot of, obviously you still see a lot of unequal, unfairness, unequal. I mean, the whites are such a small percentage of the population. I presume they still hold a vast majority of the wealth there. So, and you hear a lot about corruption in South Africa. Do you see the petty corruptions there?
Yeah, we didn't mention this often, but something also about going to the restaurants and different businesses we visited, something you'll just have to notice is that there would be a white owner and all black workers. And everywhere we went, it would be like this. And then if that wasn't the case, I'd never seen much black businesses. And you would also see more black people on the street and homeless. And one of the harder things that I didn't say when she asked when you asked when was the hardest thing, was when you went around the street and you would see people playing music or singing or just begging for money. And it was so sad because it would be to the point where people were so desperate that people either will try to steal or they will just ask you relentlessly. And it was just so hard because we would walk these same streets every day and I'd see those same people every day. And it was just really heartbreaking to know that we couldn't do anything.
The integration is happening more in places in Johannesburg and places like King Williamstown, where Steve Biko's from, and less so in Cape Town. Cape Town is still more stratified, and a lot of the South Africans refer to it as still being very white identified and so forth. So it's slow. Even though it's a very multicultural place, there hasn't been as much transition in terms of ownership there. And in the surrounds, that's wine country and so forth. And so you go to these wonderful wineries out there, and they're all the laborers out in the field are black, and the people that own them and are sitting sipping wine are white. You see that in the Cape Town area in the south. I've got to run the class. I'm going to excuse myself. I got a 12:30.
End it, but thank you all. Please give them a round of applause. Appreciate it very, very much. And thank you again. Those